Good morning, everyone. Welcome to American Scousers Morning Coffee or Tea with American Scouser. It's Wednesday, so I'm back to being the greatest dad. That's what I do on Wednesdays, how we roll around here. As always, with us on a Wednesday is John, waiting to be the greatest dad. What do we have this morning? Coffee or?
Yeah, just some coffee with the old Liverpool mug. I got to represent here because we have a very special guest.
Yes, I should have done that more. We should have done the whole thing, wear the jersey and the full.
Right.
But and with us, yes, we have a special guest today. We'll be doing this actually throughout the month, and actually next month as well. Gearing up for the Premier League shows that we're going to do this year on American Scouser TV. The very first one. So you're going to be the scapegoat for everybody else after you. Shay is with us from the Memphis Villa Lions. Is that the official name?
That is the official name, Memphis Villa Lions.
So, Shay, I'll let you kind of like introduce yourself, how long you've been a Villa fan, how did you end up being a Villa fan, all that good stuff.
Yep. Like I said, my name's Shaylin, representing the Memphis Villa Club, like I was telling them a little bit earlier. Majority of Tennessee at this point. Became a Villa fan. Let's see, Dad grew up in Birmingham. He used to live literally down the street from Villa Park when he was in England growing up. Came over to the U.S. when he was like 16, so he's always followed them. So I kind of had no choice growing up. Your firstborn there's two choices: Florida State Seminoles, because that was the college that he went to, and then like I said, the Villa, born and bred. So loved it. Never gone back. Growing up in the as a kid, supporting them, everybody's like, who are they? Because you always had your Man United fans, Arsenal, Liverpool, and I'm just like, hey, it's the team it is. Hoping to actually go to a game for the first time next year. Like I said, start a new job, so it's a little difficult. Trying to work around that schedule, just because I want to go for at least a week to catch a 2-2 kind of. But yeah, like we've grown the chapter really well. I think it's about 10, 12 members, which is honestly a really good number for the city of Memphis. Because there's a big Arsenal group out there that we're always really friendly with, so it's just kind of fun, giving them shit all the time, especially when they bought all the league. So the banter between the two groups is always top notch. And like I said, we do have a little semi-pro team in Memphis, so we're all a fan group of that as well. So it's kind of hilarious seeing all these different clubs in England that everybody supports, yet we're always supporting the Memphis 901 as well.
So that's interesting, actually, because I know, when we talk to a lot of the official Liverpool supporter clubs, always the challenge is, finding a location, finding a suitable pub to watch the games and stuff like that, especially, Krakow Dawn games and all that. But they are, eventually able to, because they have the numbers. I assume you guys, do you guys share it with multiple teams or?
Yeah, so there's two Irish pubs in Memphis. So I'll give them a little shout out, a little promo for them. Celtic Crossing is one of them in Midtown. So usually DJ is actually a Liverpool fan too, which is kind of hilarious. Because he literally says, he's like, man, I open up for everybody. Majority of the time, it's United supporters. There's a big group in Memphis. And I know it burns his ass a little bit just because it's United, but it's tough. It's tough. But he's like, he said it perfectly. He's like, I like money, and I was like, right. I can't fault you on that one, DJ.
Yeah.
Anytime there's a Villa match on, like we literally just shoot DJ a text. He'll be like, hey, we're already open. For whatever the opening game is. If you guys are the first one, come on in. He'll open at 5:30, 6 o'clock. He'll stay open until 1 or 2 in the morning. So they're always really take care of us really well. And then the second one, shout out to Seamus as well. So he actually owns the Brass Door, which is downtown. So that's the Arsenal pub. So we kind of flip flop. So if we're playing Arsenal, we'll go over there and mess with them and their little home. It's always hilarious just because it's usually my dad and myself. It's just two of us. The rest of the groups, they got families, so they can't usually make the early games, but we'll go in there just causing a ruckus. So
I feel like the long-term goal, Shay, would probably be a Villa pub, yeah?
Yeah, hopefully. We just need a little bit more, but I'm fine with sharing it. No worries. When you know the owners and you're really good friends with them, it doesn't matter. It's your pub at the end of the day. So
right.
Yeah, that's true. I think, sometimes it makes it interesting to have another set of groups. I personally don't like that because, I sometimes want to watch with other Liverpool fans because they're going to make some stupid comments that I'm not going to be big on. But so it's ironic that you're our first guest doing this because last year when we did the Premier League show, and I think I sent you the link, it's still to date our most watched video because we were doing like a preview for every single team. And the funny thing is, honestly, we were kind on Villa. Like, it wasn't like a very negative one. But I think and I mean, I know a lot of Villa fans took that negatively for the most part. Like, we got the usual, oh, American, what do they know? And then there was a lot of like over the top, um, like optimism, perhaps.
For
And
sure. There's definitely very optimistic fans. And like I was telling you, we were chatting, growing up in the States, we have so many sports here. So it's really hard. Like in England, it's one sport. That is it. They're born and bred football. You go for that team. I've talked to a lot of, like I said, so a little backtrack. So we usually do a North American meetup every year. So this past year, we were actually in Seattle. So we had a lot of the North American chairmen all meet up in the city, and we'll usually watch a match for a couple of days, go on a booze cruise, and just hang around the whole time. We actually had Gary Shaw come visit. He was our guest of honor this year. So it was cool to see a National Champions League winner. We like to compare, Jackie's still one of ours. I know it's still salty. It hurts that he left, but like Gary Shaw was what Jack was. Born and bred a Villa fan, came through the academy, played for Villa his entire career, and then won the Champions League. Like, he did it all. And he was surprised too. He was like, he was in absolute shock that there was this many Villa fans in the United States, and he was in tears. Like, it was sad. Like, it was everybody else was almost crying, because like, here's a player that's played the game, and he was just absolutely shocked and loved it. But like I said, growing up in the States, you support other teams. Like I said earlier, Dad, Florida State fan, I went to Ole Miss. So, it's a divided household, but it's a respectful household. And like how you were saying at other bars, some people say some awful stuff. Just to, it's competitiveness is kind of how we have it. But I'll say in Memphis, Everybody is very friendly. Like I said, we're all friends. Yes, we support other teams, but like, it's just, it's chippy banter. Like, nobody's going to really say anything to offend the other person in that sense. Cause like, there's no need for it. Like I said, we all watch the 9-on-1. So what's the point? I'm going to go drink a beer with that guy anyway. So
yeah,
like, obviously I'm going to shit talk a little bit. Like, I'm going to bring it up, rub some salt in the wounds. That day, the 7-2 win, my uncle's a huge Liverpool fan. Like, when we scored that 6th goal, I was coming down the bar and I looked and I was just like, he just looked at me and shook his head. But then we literally went home and I was like, what is he going to do? It's my uncle.
Yeah, that was a painful memory to bring up.
Was,
okay, so let's bring you up some painful memories then. Sure,
always. I know we got a bunch.
So, I mean, the main thing we talked about at the time was the season before was when Gerrard came in. And obviously, as Liverpool fans, then you kind of like watch that team a bit more, as he was kind of seen at the time. He was seen as the next guy after Klopp. That's who everybody wanted to do, pass it to him and stuff. And the big argument was, is it going to be Pep Lenders or is it going to be Gerrard? And the people would argue over that. I don't think that argument is there anymore for the most part.
That one's gotten squashed now. So
yeah, I think that we're not going to hear that for a little bit. But,
I think Shabby has replaced him as well. As like, Shabby Alonso is like the new.
Shabby Alonso is probably a little bit better man manager. So
they basically, he had that initial new manager smell thing going when he first came, but then he kind of like leveled off. Like Villa was safe. And our concern was, is he going to be able to make things mesh? And like I say, there was a lot of like over the top optimism. We thought, at least, we're like, it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be interesting to see. What do you, as a Villa fan, and what do you make of the overall Gerrard experiment?
So I'm sure, like I said, Villa fans, we're a crazy bunch. And like how you said, you got a lot of pushback. I mean, I'm probably going to get some pushback for this. Growing up, like I said, in the U.S., Dad being from England, growing up an England fan. So I've watched them for years. Stevie G was one of my all-time favorite midfielders. So growing up playing the sport, that's who I wanted to be. I was like Steven Gerrard. I absolutely loved him as a player, still do. But as a manager, like I said, it was rough. We had the optimism. Like, he's coming in. He's got the background. The man has born and bred the Premier League. Like, he's been in it. We thought, he would be able to bring that experience too with him. But, like we said, when we're chatting on Twitter, it's just, I think his ego definitely got into the way of it, because there was some bad blood between him and Tyrone Mings and some of the other players. And like I said, it's rumors. I don't really know. Like, the club kept it under wraps pretty well, but like, we have insiders and stuff. And I'll actually say one of the main reporters for us, Ashley Priest, he was asking a question about Cameron Archer one weekend. Because our striker situation at the time wasn't really good. Ollie was struggling, and we only had Ollie Watkins as our striker. We had nobody else. Right. So Cameron Archer, a young kid, was scoring some really good goals in the championship, and I was like, he's ready. Like, well, what's it gonna hurt? We're literally struggling at this point to find the net. Like, what's gonna happen? And he, after one of the matches we ended up losing, I'm pretty sure, or something like, Ashley Priest asked him, it's like, hey, what about bringing in Cameron Archer or some of the young kids? And Stevie G snapped back at him. He's like, what, are you really good friends with the family or something? Like, took it as disrespect. And I was like, I mean, Stevie, probably so. Like, Birmingham, like, everybody is all around each other. Like, this kid came through the academy. I'm sure he is friends with some of his family. But, like, as a manager and a professional, like, you shouldn't get flustered that much by a question. Like, what if somebody asks, Klopp that, like, hey, why aren't you bringing in one of y'all's youngsters that's doing really well?
He'd probably be snappy as well.
He would be a little bit snappy too. But you guys also had the depth where, you could cover that. We did not. It was literally Ollie or nobody else. And he's just, ready to rock and roll. So
right, Shay, to follow up on that point. So a lot of Liverpool fans at the time before, Gerrard got sacked and everything like that. It might be our inherent bias towards him, but they're saying that a primary reason why it didn't work out was because there was, to your point, you guys were pretty thin on strikers. So their whole thing was, it's because he never got his full squad together. Mm-hmm. Like, is there any truth to that, I guess? Or is that like a gross, like, oversimplification of the issue? Because you would know, of course.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. Like I said, he brought in Boubacar on a free. I definitely think that was because of Gerrard. But the Coutinho one, like, hey, I love that. Like, I've always been a Coutinho fan, but, just not at the right time, and just injuries have definitely hurt him. And I don't know, like, who he was trying to go after, because, like you said, the transfer window was so crazy, and, like, the club gave him some money. I think it's just because of how, when he came in, we didn't really improve. They were kind of looking at, should we keep giving him money and just bring in more players without offloading anybody? So we're getting back to that. Getting back to that system, like when we had the older coaches, they're bringing in a bunch of new players. We're not offloading anybody. And like I said, so when Emery came in, he only brought in one player. That was it, the left back. And it was the exact same team that Stevie had. He just was somehow able to manage them better, connect with them better, and got them absolutely firing. Because like I said, now we're pushing for the European Conference League. So
did Gerrard almost make that easier because it was so chaotic? So when you have, and it's a bit easy for Unai to come in and say, hey, this is how we're going to roll, just because of his experience and stuff like that. Whereas everybody, I think, was looking at Gerrard like, kind of like how we were, like, is he going to be able to do it? So for a guy like, for example, you mentioned Mings, because that came out, I don't know the details, but I know, like, the story came out and there were some other rumblings as well. Is it easier for Unai to come and say, okay, here's what we're going to do, as opposed to putting Gerrard in that situation in the first place?
A little bit of both, because like I said, I mean, Mings was the captain, and I feel like, Gerrard came in and that was his punishment. Stripped him of the captaincy, gave it to McGinn, which, McGinn grew into it. But I think even in the beginning of the season, McGinn was not comfortable with being the captain. You can tell. He's a vocal leader on the field, but to be that actual, like, hey, he saw that one of his really good friends got stripped and almost as punishment, because, I don't know if Gerrard really liked him to begin from the get-go. And, like I said, we weren't buying anybody, so you have to use what you got. Like, sometimes it's tough. And I feel like that's where Gerrard, fumbled the bag, so to say. Like, punishing Mings for no reason. Like, I don't know what he did wrong. He never gave a proper explanation. And like I said, I understand you want to, get your own system going. So who knows?
That's like a double-edged sword too, because if he kind of like, spills out the laundry, it's going to be like, hey, why are you bringing this stays in the club, blah, blah, blah. But if he doesn't make it official, I guess sometimes, like, it's more difficult. We're going to talk about captaincy in a little bit when we get to the headlines too. But I think sometimes it's harder for a guy like Gerrard, who has been the player he has been, the captain he has been. It's kind of harder to relate to somebody who can't do what you were doing. There's a reason why you were special. And then when you coach somebody, that's why you don't always get a good player. Sometimes makes a brutal manager, because things that were simple to them are not simple to everybody else. That's what made them special.
Shay, on the subject of players as well, it's kind of a cliche question, but next year, looking at the squad, all that, you have a group of players or a specific player that you're like, oh, I'm looking forward to watching this guy every single game, micro camera on him. You got that kind of player in the squad?
Next year, I'll say about two. Like I said, with the Yuri Telemans, I think that's a massive signing, because, I mean, everybody in the club wanted him, or not in the club, in the league was looking to get him. How we snagged him on a free is honestly crazy. But, being from the area, I guess, he's got his family, wants to stay. And I would say Jacob Ramsey, like, I think he took huge leap forward this year. Kid's only 21 years old. Like, he's pushing for that England senior team squad. And I think he's gonna make the next step up, and where he's gonna be that leader and take over that role, eventually become the club captain. So those are the two that I'm definitely looking forward to.
So for the new season, obviously Unai comes in, and I mean, they had like a really high trajectory initially, right? Towards the end of the season, it kind of like slowed down a little bit. Is that a concern, knowing what happened? The similar thing happened to Gerard, or there's more?
I would say yes. Like I said, because I mean it's the same squad. Like I said, he only brought in one. I definitely think Emery definitely saw that too. Like he was working with what he had. So hopefully, this summer, once July starts, he's gonna add maybe 2 or 3 more pieces. Because like I said, we're gonna have to have more depth now, especially playing these extra games. We haven't done that in a long, long time. So I know these players have a lot of miles on their legs because they played almost every match as soon as Emery came in. So it'll be interesting to see. We just need better depth.
And maybe here's a loaded question for you then, and then you do know some Liverpool fans. So let's get an outsider's look over here. How is Liverpool viewed right now from like a Villa fan perspective in terms of like what's going to happen? Obviously on our end we always have the optimism of similar to like Villa fans. I guess every fan is like, it's fine of being a fan, you're optimistic, right? You're like, he'll come back, he'll be great, we'll sign that guy, and but from an outsider we look, it's probably a bit more objectively. So as a Villa fan, how is Liverpool seen? Is it seen as a club that's going to come right back, or like the window has closed, or how do you guys view it? Normal.
So I wouldn't say window's closed. Jurgen is still a great manager. I know people have their issues with him, just because he's a very charismatic guy. So some people just don't like that. Some people very, like a no nonsense kind of manager. The club, I would just say you guys are getting old, but that's with every sport. I think how Klopp is like Emery. He plays the same players a lot, so the miles are starting to catch up. Y'all's midfield has definitely been almost ran dry. Because I discuss this with my friends all the time. Like we literally chat about soccer all the time. Just Fabinho, Salah, and all them, like y'all have been running them almost ragged for the last 2-3 years and not bringing in anybody to help them out. Like I said, you brought in Nketiah to try to fill that void, and now he's leaving on a free, which I know it didn't work out. But he was a good player. It's all we don't know how these players are going to act. I just think it's definitely time for rebuild for the whole club. Whether or not y'all are going to do it this year or next year, always going to be competitive without a doubt. It's still Liverpool. There for the longest time is literally City, Liverpool. Y'all two are fighting each other for that top spot, and I think that's it. You just need some new blood. I think Jurgen still got it. People say he's maybe done and he's about to step down. I don't believe that. It's just he knows that the team is getting old and he wants to bring in some new legs. It's just with the way the market is, like I said, with the Saudis sitting here paying $80 million for like Ruben Neves, it's kind of tough to compete with that, no matter how rich of a club you really are.
So let me ask you that. So you said one like Klopp, some people like him, some people don't. In terms of players, like give me a player that we talk. I mean, my brother, I talk a lot about him on the show. He's a United fan. So like sometimes we talk and I'll tell him who I find annoying at United, and it's a long list. So it's easier to say who I don't find annoying at United. But give me because when he says like certain players that he finds aggravating, annoying, frustrating to watch, I'm like, really? Because to a fan, you see the best side of everybody. Who's a player that rubs people the wrong way? I guess like in a Villa fan, you guys are watching the game at a bar against Liverpool. You're like, God, I hate that asshole.
So for sure, I would say Fabinho. I remember the last match we played, y'all. Like that man had like 7 fouls without getting a yellow card. And I remember watching it. It was either Douglas or McGinn went for his first tackle, instant yellow. And I was like, Fabinho's going in like a wrecking ball. And like the game's rough. I'm not saying it isn't. But like he was going in making dirty challenges and didn't get a single call. And I was like, what is this? And I was sitting there counting him the whole time. And I was like, I could play a game with myself, take a shot every time he fouls somebody and doesn't get a card. But I would have been hammered and wouldn't be able to finish the game. So I would definitely say Fabinho is one of those that may be a universal between the fan groups in the club.
Really?
Yeah, it's just like he's good, but like you said, he's a menace. So like people don't.
I would have never guessed that. Like I would have never guessed Fabinho. That's odd. Okay.
I would have expected like Robbo or someone like Robertson.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Like Robertson. I know like Bobby. We find his no-look goals humorous, but I'm sure not everybody does. So that's fair. But yeah, that's shocking to say Fabinho but I can understand what you mean because I know like like City had Fernandinho, right? Like,
Yeah,
you know, would
Fernandinho
do
was the
those
same way. Just
fouls,
very,
somehow never gets a card, but stops the counters and stuff like that. You're like, God, that is so annoying. So I guess it does kind of make sense. So give us an early prediction before we kind of like go over to the headlines here.
Yeah.
Give us an early prediction of what you think this season will bring for Villa and for Liverpool.
Yeah. So for Villa, you know, I don't want to be negative, but you know, West Ham was in the same boat that we were. You know, they rode high last season, but they didn't really bring in anybody. So that's kind of the concern right now. You know, we got one player, but like obviously we do business very well. Like last year when we signed Danny Ings, nobody knew about it until the day it happened. So we're doing business in the background. So, you know, it's optimistic there. I just think being in Europe for the first time in, like I said, about 10 years, it's going to be a challenge for this group of players. You know, the only European experience we had at the time was Ashley Young, and he's gone now. So all these players have never actually got a taste of it. They're all internationals, so they played competition all around the world. But I mean, if we can just maintain the top 10 and, you know, do really well in the conference league, I'll be okay with that. Like, just obviously the goal is always to stay in the league. But I think they can maintain the top 10, and, you know, maybe we can pull a West Ham and win a title in the first time in one time.
See, like if I said this on air in a clip, people would go ape shit on me. When you wear the jersey and say it seems like a more honest analysis.
More honest, yeah. We're just being real. So,
see, I thought you'd be a lot higher actually. So, is it because of the concern of what happened this year? Like, you know, the season before kind of had promises and then it starts like a flop, or is this, I mean, to be honest, like part of being a Villa fan where you don't know which way it's going to go?
Like I said, we never know. Cause I mean, you know, back in the day, I'm sure you guys, you know, like I said, back in when Martin O'Neill was there, like we were flying high. Like who'd have thought we'd have finished 3 years in a row, top 6 pushing for the Champions League. And then it went straight downhill. Lerner left. We were in almost administration. So anything can happen. You know, with this current economy going, like, you know, inflation on these players is super high. Like, you know, teams are going to get priced out of buying players. So trying to find gems is a lot more difficult. And like I said, just being not too optimistic. Because like I said, you got to be realistic at this point. I know a lot of Bill fans are going at it. And like, you know, I'm watching the Twitter pages, and you have the ones that have level heads. Some of them are obviously shoot for the moon. Good for them. Let them do it. But we got to be real ourselves. Like I said, the team has been together now for like 3 years. Like I said, with these extra matches, it's definitely going to affect them because, like I said, they're not used to that. It's the same with y'all right now. Like I said, you guys have played so many games in the last 2 or 3 years. The team is running on E. Like, yes, they're professional athletes, but you know, when somebody's been running 3 years straight and y'all have played, like, I'm not sure how many, you know, probably about 50 games a season.
Yeah.
I don't care how good of an athlete you are, it's going to take a toll on you. So, like, fatigue
and
is
I
going to
think the World Cup, like the short summer and stuff like that.
Short summer World Cup. I mean, they're already getting ready to come over to the U.S. and start their mid-season tour in the hottest fucking time in America right now. So, like, these players aren't going to get. They're not prepared for it as much as they think they are. You know, they go train in Dubai, and I was like, look, American Heat versus Dubai Heat, 100 different. I was like, come train in Atlanta or Tennessee for a summer. And then I think you'll be fine. The humidity would whoop their ass up.
Well, Shay, I'll put you on the spot here. Since you said that the squad is very thin, it looks like they're going to be training in the hottest season here in America.
Yep.
So if you were going to prioritize, right? Like, let's say I was going to give you 2 scenarios right now.
Okay.
Like a guaranteed top 7 spot, right? A guaranteed top 7 spot, or a deep run in the Conference League, but you have no idea how that's going to turn out, right? And your league position, of course, is up in the air as well.
Yeah. So
what say you?
I would like basically either West Ham this year or where we were at.
Right.
Honestly, I would take where we were at previously. Like, you know, if we get knocked out, we get knocked out. But if you finish 7 again, you're back in it. So, you know, it's still a positive season. You're still in the competition. Yeah, you got knocked out earlier, but you're going to be right back in it. And I'm fine with maintaining, you know, top 6, top 7 every year. Like, that's great because we're trying to build the club up again. Like, it's a long process. So,
that's interesting because I know you know, we're gonna have somebody from West Ham the next couple of weeks here.
Yeah.
And when I was like, hey, you know, like that was a good ending. You know, when we were talking on Twitter, I was like, that was a good ending to the season. I know it was a rough one, and he was like, rough one. It was just like a regular season. Like it was like at least we made the European run. It was kind of like different in that sense. I was like, I guess that's fair, and that's why it's kind of like interesting to hear these perspectives.
Yeah.
And I mean, I personally think Villa, and I think my bias is, you know, last year when you were looking at the team, My doubts were more on Stevie, to be honest, more than anything else, and how it's going to keep going this way. I feel like I have a lot more faith, and I maybe because he always plays us tough, wherever the hell he is like Unai in terms of like doing certain things and playing the right people. But I think I mean, talking to you, you do have a good point of that team kind of tiring out too, and it's going to be depending on who they bring. And yes, I think for smaller clubs, while you were talking about like the inflation and the pricing and stuff, I guess it's almost getting trickier because in the past you were able to get a guy like Inks, right, like late 20s, blah blah blah. Now that guy can just go to Saudi Arabia and get like freaking like 5 times the money, and maybe those older experienced guy deals are not where they were before.
Well, real quick, like we got John McGinn at the time for £2.5 million. When's the last time a player's gone for that cheap and turned into a very good Premier League player?
Right.
Like, it's tough now because like I said the other day, like I was looking, there's a kid 19 in Italy. A team in Qatar is already looking to sign him, give that kid about $250,000 a week and whatever. Like he's 19 years old, he hasn't proven anything. That was the same situation we had with Carney Chukwuemeka, and he went to Chelsea. Like he went for the money. Like this kid, I get it. It's your livelihood. You got to make money, but you also got to look at it in the long term. If you win stuff, you're going to get paid.
Oh yeah, you should have seen the Monday Night Podcast. We were fighting about this. Do you take the money? Do you take the career? And is it like more about legacy? Is it more about money? Yeah, we had quite a fight going over there. So we're going to talk about that whole Saudi thing because there was a new headline coming out this morning. But let's start with this. So I don't know if you guys saw the story. Kind of like Courtois says, it was my knee. I know what you guys are talking about. But supposedly there's a thing over captaincy. One game it was going to be him, one game it was going to be Lukaku. Courtois did not take that very well. So to a certain extent, I can understand why in terms of, I know we talked about this, I think it was with Mateusz before, where the U.S. team just like picks it out of a hat and stuff like that. John, what do you make of that story? I'm not big on, why don't you do it this week? Why don't you do that next week? Kind of like a high school team thing going over here. Right. What do you make of it?
Yeah, when I read it, I was extremely disappointed, considering, Courtois is as experienced. He's won basically everything there is to win in football. So to excuse my language, to bitch about something absolutely trivial is very unbecoming for a player of his stature. I just think back to Belgium, how talented they are. They have bigger issues than the captaincy. Let's be real. They have bigger issues, chemistry wise and all that. This certainly isn't helping, but it could that whole situation clearly shows why this team has underachieved every international tournament. If you guys are stressing over such absolutely trivial shit, then I guess we know why the so-called golden generation has failed to achieve what they're expecting.
Let me play the devil's advocate because I do great at it. So Shay, at the same time, kind of like how you started your phrase, right? For a guy that's won everything and played at the top level, and god damn it, pretty much won the freaking Champions League for him. Otherwise, that should have been an easy win for us. He single-handedly won the Champions League for Real that season. Isn't it almost at the same time, Shay, just natural and common sense to be like, you're the captain, man, you're the shit?
Yeah, unless we don't know how they run their team. Like I said, if it's incentive based, then I get it. But at the end of the day, it's all superficial. Like, who cares? Because at the end of the day, whoever is the true leader is going to be the one dictating the tempo of the play. The armband literally does nothing. Like, it's just like, oh, hey, he's the captain, cool. But, when you're watching the match, there's probably somebody in the midfield that's actually dictating it, or the center back is doing it, not Courtois. Courtois, you can't hear – Lukaku's not going to hear him from the other side of the pitch. That's about it. He's only going to dictate his front four, which he does all the time anyway. So, it's just – unless there was a money-based incentive, I can see it, but it's a petty –
He made it sound like it was more like a respect incentive, if you will, like saying, hey, you're the man, which, he is. I mean, I think he's like the best goalie in the world right now. Like with Ali, I would put him right up there. I'm 1-2 probably between them. I guess like he could be a little bit Liverpool biased, but it's the same thing. I feel like, like they single-handedly win games. I think it was more of him, wanting that to be respected. Well, Shaydan, let me ask you, like the captain, what do you like better? I mean, do you want the experienced guy, you know, the old school generic, like, you know, you have Ashley Young in there. You're like, here, you're the oldest one, right? Here's the captain's band. Or do you want it given to a specific type of player, or do you even care who's your player?
So like I said, most of the time I don't really care, but like obviously if somebody you see, you know, you're playing like say 2 or 3 matches and you notice that like, that player alone is the one sitting there always on your ass, like saying, hey, we mess up, go back, you know, constantly keep your head up. That's the person I want to be the captain, because he's the leader. He's the one making sure everybody's keeping their heads up, not getting, you know, down like, oh, we conceded a goal. Cool. Hey, keep your head up. You're still in this match. It's 1-0. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Like that's the kind of intensity and energy you want as a captain. Like, you know, seniority could mean anything. Like I said, Ashley Young, like say he wasn't that player, but like he was 38. Like, okay, you're 38, you get the captain. Like, okay.
And that's like the odd thing. I mean, I played like under captains that had no business of being a captain. I played under captains who were like really good captains. I've been a captain. I've almost felt like the season before I almost acted as a captain, because I think like what you were saying, Shay, there are times where there is an official captain, especially like in certain teams, and it usually goes by age on those teams, like the oldest one. But then there are certain players that the younger players look up to, listen to, follow, and stuff like that. But do you like that concept, John, where it's like on Mondays is Lukaku, on Wednesdays is Courtois? Are you cool with that? Or if you were from Belgium, I mean, obviously you're going to be like, I don't give a damn what your captains to start fucking playing while we have all this talent.
Right.
But, you know, like, would you rather have him pick a person?
Yeah, well, at this point, I think it might be suitable for the Belgian team to just draw something out of a hat at this point, considering each of their players keep bitching about whoever's going to be wearing the armband. Like, I mean, you'll just be like, oh, okay, I'm captain because it was purely out of luck. You're not going to bitch about that, because what are you going to bitch about, luck? Come on.
Wait, are you gonna? It's an easy chance. It's
easy chance, exactly. I'm actually a big believer of like being regiment captain, of there being like a so-called regiment captain. Like, for example, using Liverpool as an example, I do feel like certain parts of the pitch have their own leaders. Like, I dare say, our attack, I know it's not obvious, but I feel like Salah leads that quite a bit. I think Salah's more of a lead by example kind of player. Rather than like, you know, someone shouting at everyone and organizing everyone like Hendo does. But yeah, I do feel like each area of the pitch has their own leader. And in essence, that kind of renders the whole official captain thing kind of like moot, redundant. But yeah. Again, it should be semantics, right? But you know, there's player egos and all that. But so yeah. To answer your question, Tim, at this point, I think Belgium do need to implement the draw lot system, because it seems like, you know, going forward, it might be what's best for them, because then that squad is messed up. Seriously, like
I think the issue, like you said, that's crazy. Like that's too much talent on that team to be arguing about.
Right, exactly. To underachieve,
like it, but it almost symbolizes that there's so much shit going on in the background,
right? And
that's why they're not playing, right? This is only one that came out. God knows what else is in the background, so it kind of explains why they're not playing. I mean, I do like and you know, we looking at Liverpool, for example, I feel like whenever Van Dijk is captain, it affects his play as well. Like some players are just meant to be good players and not necessarily be a captain. I mean, Hendo to me is the ideal captain in terms of like leading by example, getting in your face, but kind of like doing what Shay is talking about too, and you know, saying, hey, don't put your head down, almost like giving a little positive, little negative. And I think we saw that this season with COVID, right, when you could hear everything because there were no fans. I mean, you could hear Hendo talking all freaking game. And some were positive, some were in your ass, getting on your case. But when you have somebody like that giving that energy, like Shay, you were talking about, I think it makes a big difference. I mean, so if your goalie is the captain, it's more about, you know, picking, you know, flipping the coin and doing all that shit as opposed to getting on people's cases. Because, I mean, let's face it, most of the time when the goalie is yelling behind you, you're like, okay, bro, why don't you come run out over here?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Like, we're working out here.
The purpose of being like the vocal leader, like, unless you're in the box or the corner, that's the only time you're going to hear him yelling at you. So
exactly. I mean, that's the thing, you know, like, they kind of run. It's like another pair of eyes, especially now. I think it's different, you know, back in my days where I was playing as a sweeper, you were almost like the last one. The goalie always was. Now that goalie has almost become that sweeper, and there's like two center backs in front, so he has the full vision. So yes, he's gonna yell and scream and like give direction, but I don't know about like how much of an impact he would end the game. I think like with Courtois, it was more about getting that respect more than anything else. I think, which, like I said, I guess I kind of get. But going back to what you're saying, John, I mean, there's so much shit going on.
Right.
Why would you make that an issue?
I gotta say, Tim, before we move on, it's so refreshing to hear some Henderson prop every once in a while. Because whenever I'm on Twitter, it's every post is just get him out of here, send him to Saudi, all that. It's just very refreshing.
You know what, actually, that's a good question.
Yeah.
How is Hando viewed? Because I feel like I have become like a Hando apologist over the years because nobody understands his value. Nobody understands what he does. Because for most fans, if you're not doing a move, if you're not scoring, if you're not getting an assist, they don't understand the value of all the dirty work being done. Yep. Even this season, when like kind of like Shay, you were talking about, you know, people's legs are down and they can't do that dirty work. That's when the team collapses, when that dirty work is not being done. Still, people don't get the value. But how was Henderson seen, for example, from like outside?
I guess, like I said, for me personally, I like a lot of players, even if they're not on my team, because like at the end of the day, when it comes to World Cup, you gotta support them regardless of the team that they're on. And I always thought he was very influential. Like I said, he's always been that leader. Who'd y'all buy him from? Middlesbrough way back in the day. You brought him in to be that Steven Gerrard replacement, and I feel like he took that role on very well. Obviously, he's not like Stevie scoring these goals all the time, but how we just say he did the dirty work. He was doing all the stuff in the background, making sure the team was always in position and saving it when a counter attack came on. So I think a lot of fans get too carried away with the production, goals, and assists, but CDMs and holding midfield, that's not their job. Like they don't.
And I think it's been tough, kind of like you. I mean, you mentioned. I think that's a good point. Is the person he's following? That's when Liverpool fans were used to for a decade. So when you come in afterwards, you're, I mean, just as valuable in terms of what you do in the grand scheme of things, but it doesn't show on the scoreline, and that's what you're used to, like cranking the shot from far and stuff like that. So expectations become different. So let's go talk about this over here, because this is hot off the presses. Newcastle United discussed sensational Ruben Neves deal. So basically, the new scam now is the Saudis are like, what is this thing, FFP? Okay, check this out. I'm going to buy him, then I'm going to loan him back to me, but my other club at reasonable prices. And they have basically found yet another loophole. And this is going to be a big mess, John, because the rumor is they're going to loan Neves right back to Newcastle.
Yeah, it's
Newcastle signing him for 50-60. Newcastle is just going to be loaning a superstar just for the time being, kind of a thing.
Rent play.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, man. Like we already got here at Liverpool, we've been competing with City for the longest time ever since Pep took over, and we know how it is to compete against these kind of owners. Now I feel like with stuff like this going on with Newcastle, with City getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and the league like increasingly becoming like a Bundesliga, it's just I feel like more Premier League supporters are like getting their eyes are being opened, because when we finished second multiple times, people laughed at us, but right now you see shit like this and you're like, okay, so is it funny now? Like, is it funny now? Like, to Shay's point earlier, it's getting harder and harder to compete. Simple as. Like, and I can't remember, to your question, when was the last time you could get a player for $2 million? You can't anymore. That's like, that's absolute, that's worse than pocket change. It's like a dime you'd find in the street or something. Like, that never happens. Yeah. So, this whole thing is it just screams of what is going on with our sport. Yeah, what is going on with our sport, man? Like, what happens?
Go on your point, Tim. Like I said, how you're saying Newcastle doing it. So I'm sure I don't know how much you know about it, but like basically the Newcastle owners bought all four of the top teams in Saudi Arabia. So it's one ownership, four teams. Like how you said, they're going to basically buy everybody.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Yeah, I was going to get to that. I'm glad you brought it up. I don't even know how this works. So it's PIF, which is the Public Investment Fund, which I assume is the king's wallets or something like that,
Yes.
something along those lines. Uh, so they announced they take control of Al Ittihad, Al Ahli, Al Nasser, and Al Hilal. So which are pretty much like the biggest teams over there for the most part, and they own 75% of each club. How the hell does that happen? I was asking John about this. Let me ask you, Shay. How much shady business is going to happen now? Because every time, let's say Al Ittihad needs 3 points, and somehow Al Ahly says, you know what, we're going to play the young kids this week.
Yep. Well, I'm saying we know how, greasy the Italian federation was. Like we saw that Juve and them doing it. They're literally doing the same thing, but everybody is just too scared to say anything about it. Because, like, it's oil money at the end of the day. Like I don't want to sugarcoat it. It's oil money. Like they know what they have. They know that they have all the money in the world. But like I said, owning 75% of 4 teams is absurd. So like how you said, they can literally dictate who they want. It's like, oh, well, hey, this week I want you to lose.
Yeah.
Who's going to say no? Because they're fearing for their life at the end of the day. Because the coach is like, no, I want to win this. The guy's like, all right, you're gone. Bring somebody else in that's going to say yes the whole time. And how we said, like,
you're running too much. Get off the freaking
field. You're running, get off the field. Like, come on, let's do something different. But it's just it's like I said, my biggest concern about it, besides that, is just the money of the players. Like you said, Ruben Neves, very good player, but they're going to buy him for $70 million. So Wolves is going to be able to get away, not in Wolves' case, but like, so actually, I don't know if it's another one too. They own part of Chelsea too. Like they own a consortium with Chelsea. So I saw the thing because one of my friends is a really good Chelsea player. They're going to buy all these 4 players, send them to Saudi Arabia. So now Chelsea is escaping financial fair play. So they can go buy a $100 million player. Because right now they spent over $500 million. They're trying to buy Declan Rice for $100 million. They're going to breach financial play. We'll just buy Conte and all them $70 million each, even though they're past it. Here you go. There's $140 million that you can play with now.
Call me a Neanderthal, but I miss it when 2 teams compete in a final and whoever is the best team just wins.
Yep, for
all
sure.
All of this crap is just.
John, careful, man. You're sounding like me. You sound like an old man. That's not a good look. That is not a good look.
Like when Shay was explaining it, I was like, my head was just like, the meme where there's like Zach Galifianakis and it's just like with the calculations and everything, and that's why I was just like.
So where does it end? The sad thing is, if anybody brings us, so now the cap, all that kind of stuff goes down the drain. Is this basically the end of soccer as we know it then, Shay? Where's it gonna go? And you're in the worst position, you guys were already struggling to compete in this market before.
Yeah, now, I'll say we have supposedly the third richest owners, but like when you say third richest, you don't have an entire country / government funding you where you can do whatever the hell you want, especially when the whole world is basically paying them for their one resource. So like it's an infinite money while it lasts. Like obviously, we're it's going to end eventually, but will the league be able to survive that long? Like you said, we're pushing to get off of oil, so eventually that money's going to run dry. But for right now, like they're in the heat of the moment, they're able to do it, and none of these other owners can compete. Like I said, United is pushing hard to get that because they want it, even though they spend a shit ton of money all the time anyway. Like they spend over $1 billion, and they act like they're broke. But
don't get me started on that, man.
Yeah, like the grants are paying a bunch of money. Like obviously, it's funded by Tampa Bay because they're making money off of the NFL. But you're making money.
You listen to United fans; they act like we don't go out and buy players. Yeah, you do. You just buy the wrong guys.
Like buying. You spent $100 million on a fidget spinner. The man only scored 2 goals this whole season.
Right.
He can do a great spin move. I love it. It's great on FIFA. It's useless in the real world.
Yeah, bros clown us. They clown us on Nunez, but like, didn't they? Right? Like, didn't they?
Maguire. You look at the team. There's a lot of like overpriced dudes that when they signed, it was like like a big scoop and stuff like that, and not as much anymore. So it's not like they haven't spent money. And I don't know, like we'll probably get to that when Kazi shows up on Friday, the whole FSG out thing, and that's what that's what people say about FSG, the money and stuff. But at the same time, they get criticized for, they don't get like Liverpool and stuff like that. But then the same people are totally okay with an ownership that has oil money or, or they're like, I can't wait to bring Kazi on Friday morning so he can talk us about how much nicer Dubai is compared to the other oil companies. It's pretty much the same thing at the end of the day, people. I don't know how you're going to do a Rainbow Laces Day when your ownership country has it illegal to even be like homosexual and stuff like that, or you get flockings as a reward over there, but then you're gonna wear rainbow laces over here. So I don't know, like that's hypocrisy. It just like kills me. So otherwise, yeah, Chelsea has done well, but this is like a legit move, at least they've done. So Kai Havertz going to Arsenal, 60 guaranteed, and they're also still going after Rice, but I know it got rejected again, and now Chelsea is getting in there with the money. So how concerned are you about hearing about all this shit at the bar, Shay?
So, like I said, Arsenal fans, like, I like to rub salt in the wounds. Like I said, they are, a big club, but their pool has been awful. Like, they can't get the players that they want. And it's kind of hilarious. Like, even us, they tried to get Douglas Luiz, and we're like, yeah, pay us the $40 million, but their cheap asses don't want to do it. I was like, you gotta pay what we want if you really want that player that bad, kind of a thing. And I know we said the prices are crazy, but $40 million is nothing in today's market. Like, that's cheap, but they're willing to over here spend $100 million on Declan Rice, which, I mean, he's worth it. That's fine. I understand. But then like 60 on Kai Havertz, who has struggled tremendously in this league. Great player. I still think he's got a lot of potential, but you spending $60 million on him with a blink of an eye, not worth it. But you wanted to lowball us when you wanted that holding midfielder. So it's like, they reap what they sow. Like, they do it to themselves. But I do think that is going to be a really good move for him. I think Arteta will get the most out of him. Just Chelsea's been an absolute shambles coaching wise, that these players are suffering because there's a lot of talent on that team. Like, they have some really good players. It's just, again, they don't have the coach and they can't get it right. So maybe in 2 years they'll be better. But
I know John was very up on Arsenal over here. We were talking about it before we went on air. Do you think like this move, for example, takes them over the top, or you're just Arsenal a better Tottenham, if you will?
Well, let me clarify, Tim. I was up because they're actually doing something.
Oh, yeah, I got you.
Yeah, they were up because we signed McAllister and then we stopped. And if we're looking at it, we're under a lot of pressure. Like, speaking from a Liverpool perspective, right? Segueing into it, we're under a lot of pressure to get back to the levels that we were in a few years ago. Almost winning the quad and all that. Last year was massively disappointing, and to see Arsenal come up short and then target players like Rice, target players like Havertz, who has struggled in the league. But I agree with Shay. I feel like he'll be much, much better under Arteta, especially since he has no pressure to be the main guy in there. Like, if you're going to be looking at their starting 11, Havertz is probably going to be coming off the bench, probably backing up Jesus maybe. I think he, to Alan's point here, I think he does improve them. Say what you want. He struggled in the league, but he has played in the biggest games there is. He has that experience. I think Arsenal fell off quite a bit last year because they were essentially in uncharted territory. Mm-hmm. Like, a lot of their players, like, we're leading the league by like, what was it, 11?
Yeah. 11, they thought they were safe.
Right, and they were like, oh yeah, let's go. And they started like sitting back. I was like, bro, do you know who you're up against?
There's a scary machine that is literally just waiting to pounce.
Right, exactly. Like, when we won the league, how much did we need to beat them by, Tim? 18 points.
Yeah.
And we weren't even sure then. Yeah. Like, when
I'll be honest, I was like, still nervous.
Right. When Hendo had his hands on the trophy, I was looking behind me to see if like freaking Pep and Vincent Kompany was there or whatever, just to take it from us at the last second. So, I mean, in all seriousness, it's a good move from Arsenal to be targeting these kinds of players, considering the disappointing season that they had. It clearly shows that they're serious to try and keep competing at that level, which is why I'm happy for them, and which is why I'm kind of like, FSG, come on, like, show a bit of urgency.
Here we go, causing.
Like, on your point, John, like, it's like us with Villa too. Like, maybe they've learned, it's like, hey, let's just not put this out in the air, because all it does is causing panic. Like I said, the fans are like, we haven't signed anybody, they start freaking out. And like I said with us, like, we're rumored with one. You see Fabrizio always tweeting stuff, which, I mean, he's literally just following the leads. It is what it is. Half of them don't come through. But, you just got to, like I said, Sky Sports used to be the most, reliable. But now, until the club tweets it with the graphic, I'm just going to wait. Like, you can entertain yourself with rumors, but the club's working on it. We just don't need to see it all the time. And like I said, we get antsy. We're like, oh shit, what are we going to get?
Yeah, we want things to happen. And I think, like, I know what John is saying. Yeah, you see this guy signing there, this guy signing there. You're like, how about me? Like, all the kids are getting toys, I'm not getting anything, kind of thing. So I do get that. And I think Kai. We still don't know what Kai is. I don't know if the Germans know, but one thing it does for Arsenal is gives them depth, which they lacked in a title race last year when Jesus' whiny face was out with injury. Like they couldn't, they really could not replace him. They tried different things and stuff like that, and they had a lot of up and coming young players. But it goes back to what you're saying, John, is like those guys. It's already a pressure to suddenly be in the Premier League and starting and doing all that stuff. It's a totally different ballgame to do that in the title chase at the same time, because experienced players already struggle with that pressure
against Man City.
Young kids
Against Man City as well. Like, it's one thing to be in a title race, but it's different to be in a title race with Man City.
I think it's only getting more difficult,
right,
in terms of like nerves, because like I say, you see what happened, and you're like, so even in 11 points, you're still nervous. You can't play loose, but maybe at the same time, Arsenal got a bit too loose. How was that viewed, by the way? I can't wait. We're gonna bring like an Arsenal fan next week, so I definitely want to get his take. But you were more enjoying it, Shay, at the pub. But how was it taken? Is it like, I'm sure they see it as a choke job, but do they put that on the manager? Do they put it on the players? Do they put it on the ownership?
Again, like I said, two different worlds. In the U.S., we're way more optimistic, more understanding, because like I said, we follow so many sports that we can understand when stuff happens. And like I said, two of my best friends, big time Arsenal fans, obviously I'm giving them hell the whole time. Like, damn, y'all bottled it. But he even said too, he's like, this is year two. Year two for Arteta?
Yeah.
Almost had them win the league. And like you said, their best player is Saka, who's 19. Like this kid, he's still a kid.
Yeah.
And, they don't have the true experience yet, but this is going to be a big time learning curve. They're going to go next year if they compete again. Like, hey, we know not to let off the gas with 11 points in the league. You have to keep going. So I think they knew. Yes, they were sad. Like, who wasn't going to be sad? You guys lost it, but they're also understanding. Like, it is what it is. City is just such a well-oiled machine at this point, and Pep knows he's been in that situation so long. Like, I think Arteta is going to learn, and then the team will also replicate that energy. They're going to feel like, hey, we know how to maintain this now. So.
That's an interesting point, though, because American sports is built differently. So maybe like actual American fans, not like, probably handle it a bit more differently, because, American sports is built like that, because you're like, oh, wait, hockey started, and then they just like go that way. They're like, oh, wait, baseball.
Well, even if, like I said, I keep up with, like I said, soccer's number one for me all the time, but I can understand that sport it's a very volatile sport. Like, nothing's set in stone, and, you're going to have disappointment. You can't always. You gotta keep a level head on it. You can't just think you're gonna go in and win every single time. And I feel like yes, they bottled it, but that's just the nature of the game. Like, they knew they were super young. The inexperience was gonna come back to bite them. And like how we said, they're going after Kai, trying to go after Declan. Like, they're trying to bring in that depth that will help them get over that hump. And I think they learned their lesson. And they may not, if they do it again next year, then it's on them. That's them being bottle jobs for sure. So
I know, as you get older, I think maybe you get maybe wiser. So losses are a tad easier to take, but still,
it still hurts.
I feared the pain for a while. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the pain is there. So, okay, before we go, I forgot to ask you this. So let's ask a Liverpool-based question to you there, Shay. If you had the option to grab one guy out of the current squads, who would you take for Arsenal, and why, I guess?
Let's see. Probably either Salah. Who's y'all's other wide player? Not Darwin.
Diaz, Gakpo, you name it. Jota, we got it all.
Any of y'all's wide players at this point? Because Leon Bailey is one of the most frustrating players I've ever seen. Like, I know wide players are on and off, but the man literally just does the same move and will cross it, does nothing. Like, does not contribute. Y'all's wide players are constantly attacking, going back, and just being way more efficient. And we have lacked that for so long since prime Ashley Young. Back in the day, we haven't had a wide player like him since. And that's just, I know that's honestly one of our one of our biggest weaknesses is a proper wide player. So 100% Salah, Diaz, just somebody of that caliber and that style of player, basically.
Yeah, I can't wait to see Diaz back after full force from an injury and have that front
Yeah.
four. See, John, there's some freaking optimism. Okay, stop looking for people. Stop looking for signings. As long as we get 2 midfielders, we're in good shape. Okay, so hopefully maybe by Friday we will have at least 1 more midfielder. So we'll talk about it then. I'll be back Friday morning with Kazi, and Callie will be with us. So hopefully we'll be talking about a move. Then I know all these international games are kind of, that's why, John, the international games are slowing things down. So hang in there. We're gonna get you a couple of.
You'll get your signings. Don't worry, John.
Yeah, we'll get
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming. Hey, Shay, thanks a lot for joining us, man.
Hey, I appreciate it, guys.
Seeing a lot more of you hopefully throughout the season as well. Thanks to all those listening. Give it a like and a share. If you haven't subscribed, get your freaking friends to subscribe as well, because the giveaway ends in 9 days. So we'll see you guys Friday morning. Take care.
All righty.